Hello, hello. How we doing this evening, guys? Hopefully, all is well. And hopefully, we are not seeing lag like last time. Just trying to confirm and see. I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you. And yes, Tricks, it is one of my favorite songs. Still laggy? I'm not getting why. I tried a bunch of different things. That is special. Okay. Well, I guess we'll definitely see with how far this moves. Because it might be the setup a little bit. I might just need to pay for virtual camera software. In case you didn't know, that is how you guys can see my camera and my screen at the same time. I don't like how Discord does it, so I don't want to do them separately. But if it keeps going, it might have to, right? Do you guys watch the stream in full screen? Or can you see my little icon beneath it? Oh, if it echoes, Tricks, just mute the stream sound. Because you might be hearing it. Can't see your icon below? You know what, guys? Let's try something new here. Alright? Let's try something new. On PC, but on phone, no. Well, what if the people who were watching it on their phone, well, unfortunately for them, they could not. Well, I guess they couldn't watch it. Oh no, that's why. Because I can't share my camera at the same time that I am recording my camera because I don't have a capture device, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry, Rusty. No Wi-Fi for you. I need to start the virtual camera. Should be all good for now. So definitely some stuff that are going to be moved around here. But for now, we're just going to have a regular monthly statistical outlook. I feel like I forget every time and to just remind myself, oh, it's true. It's the start of a new month now. So monthly outlook time. But June is a good one. June is definitely a good one, right? Because most months trading indices outlook, it's just the same. It's bullish. Bullish, 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 and sometimes you expect it to be trending from the first week. Sometimes you'll see a 1 to 2 week downswing and then third week expansion higher, right? Which is what it has been for the last few months at least, except right now I'm in a weekly chart. So of course we had our downswing and that was all predicted in the same way as well. But now that we're coming up to June, and the reason why I'm in the weekly chart right now is so that we can easily refer to those yearly highs. This is the previous year high and previous year low of 2024 in this case. As you can see, if you were looking at this on a 15-minute chart, right, and you saw the daily open right here, what would you expect price to do? Well, keep going higher. This is a beautiful reversal of key points of interest. But here's the thing. Oh, well, first, before we get to that, let's look at our additional confirmation, right? Premium and discount. We see our first premium and efficiency, and we have clearly disrespected that and continued forward by closing through liquidity levels. This is just a clear indication that I want to see continued bullishness, and our clear objective are the relative equal highs above on both assets, right? So I'm going to expect a continuation of this trend higher. But if we're looking simply at the month of June, then we have to look at the specifics, right? Okay, well, if we know we're going to get there, how are we going to get there? And that's where statistical outlooks come in. We're going to start simple, looking at seasonality. As you guys can tell, right, we have NASDAQ on top, ES on the bottom. Pretty boring months in terms of seasonality, but as you can see, has a tendency of forming a pullback, right? You can see it clearly on the 5-year average. If you guys are wondering what those lines mean, they're all at the bottom here. You can see all of the averages here, how we go have a nice pullback before closing the month. And now on our 5-year average, we tend to see a bearish month actually. Well, actually, no, we're closing here. It's more all-time average. And that's a little more of a NASDAQ thing. But we see a lot of divergence. Pretty boring month. Usually tend to see quite a sizable pullback here on ES. And as we can see from our current year, which is the red line, right, we had a very nice open into a consolidation. then expansion into a low, and are now seeing some bullish price action. This confirms pretty much everything we wanted to see for a bullish year, at least bullish summer, right? If you want to split the year into quarters, right, you're going to have the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter. Now, we just started the first quarter with quite bullish movement, and I'd like to see a pullback and a continuation into the summer months to have really just the best case scenario, right? But seasonality for the month of June, what does that tell us? Expect a pullback, should be able to recover higher. But now let's move a little further, right? And let's actually start easy and refer to the bias, because I've been talking to some people recently about this mechanical bias, right? And some people are not familiar with it. This is logic that was first brought to my attention by T-Trades Education. If you don't know who he is, you can find him on Twitter. You can find him on plenty of places. But it is simply looking at the previous candle high and low and how the current candle, I guess, interacts with it to then predict the next candle over. Like, for example, this month, the month of May, we closed through previous month high. What does this tell us specifically? Well, this specific bias, and let's actually head over to the help section so you guys can see, this specific bias tells us that we would have a bullish bias going into the next month. So now going into June, we'll have a bias of previous month's high. And if we go to our bias dashboard, we'll see that a previous month high bias out of 145 times, well, this is the occurrence, but had an 80% win rate. You can see it here, rounded up to 81% in this case. And if we refer, the most often scenario is closed above previous month's high, with almost 70% of the time being the cause for previous month high bias. Now we can go a step further and look specifically at the month of June, and now you'll see that the success rate goes even higher, in this case, looking at 86%. Now, is this the most valuable data? Well, in general, I'd say no, because if you look right here, let's go to a daily chart. The high of the month of June, right, of the month of May, sorry. Let me actually, I really want to make this easy to see for you guys. This is the month of May. Okay, well, that's previous month high. We are in close proximity to it. So is it the most helpful data? Well, in this case, you'd say, well, at any point during the month, we could reach for this level. Not really, even though this would be an 85% plus probability level, right? I didn't feel like saying 71. But you truly see the value of the combinations of these statistics when you go look at more specific range profiling. For example, here we're looking at the month of June. This is the only filtering that I am currently using. During the month, I'll use specific rate filtering. For example, if we take out previous month's high during the first week, for example, I'll say, okay, well, we took out previous month high during the first week, and now I'll have more in-depth average range levels that I can use, and more specifically extremes profiling. But now we're not there yet. Yeah, so let's remove this specific rate filtering, and if we're looking specifically at the month of June and we refer to the extremes, well, we'll notice one very specific things. We tend to form the high and or the low early and then have some consolidation, right? We don't form the extremes very often outside of these key weeks. If we go back to the dashboard, we'll notice very simply, we have a higher probability of having a bearish month. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. If we go back to our chart, we've been running for 2 months now, pretty much, right? Yeah, since the start of April. So seeing a pullback, especially after the first month of this new quarter going into the summer, would actually be very nice to see. Now, just to go back into our raids actually, right? If we are to raid the previous month high, as we just analyzed in our bias analysis, when should that happen? Well, it's very simple, 85% chance of happening the first week. So what am I going to be expecting for the month of June, and specifically this week? Well, go take out this high and then form some sort of pullback. Pull back into this recent range, right? If you guys want specific levels, I'm looking at the low of April in this case. I want to see a pullback in this range, and then more so that afterwards we can keep continuing higher, head to previous yearly high. Now we could just as well expand higher and form our high here before expanding lower, right? If we go back to our profiling here, we can see that we have a very high probability of forming the high during week 1 and or week 3, I guess. So if we are to see, for example, a bearish month, the high usually forms during week 1. But if we are to see a bullish month, the high will generally form in the week 3. So how am I going to differentiate these parameters? Well, it's very simple. It's based on how we interact with previous month high. And if we expand past previous month high, I'm going to expect us to go for all-time highs right away and then form a pullback, just like we see on our chart with this simple drawing. But what if we sweep this during the first week, of course, and then we see a close back within this range, right? This recent range that I'm currently referring to. Let me actually draw it so it's a little easier to understand. If we see something like this, well, I'm not going to expect us to head for the previous yearly high during this month. I'm going to expect the pullback to be quite aggressive and perhaps see some form of huge retracement here. And by huge, I just mean more sizable. If we look at the actual data here, out of a 5.32% average range, we tend to see a 1.37% retracement. That is quite sizable. And now these numbers are not what I like to see usually, because we've seen more volatility in the recent years. So I'll refer to the last 3 years for June, if I'm looking at specific months, right? Or the last 5 years, which is also something. As you can see, these numbers have significantly changed now. And we also tend to see more bullishness in June in the most recent years, right? That's how filtering can affect your data quite easily. This is why I won't be expecting a bearish month, but I'll actually be expecting a pullback followed by continuation. Now, depending on if we open, honestly, best case scenario, we see a quite sizable gap down so that our framework can now build something like this, and we'll see a retracement, for example, to our liquidity void that we had not retraced into. We did not need to retrace to that point at that time, but this is an area of inefficient price delivery. Just like we can see here, that it is a gap in price, right? I'd like to see these zones retested. Of course, I don't want us to go all the way back down here, and I'm not trying to predict that price will go all the way back down here. I'm simply saying that these zones tend to act as a magnet for price, right? I'd like to see a very nice open high, depending, of course, on how we close for this level. It will affect this week what we'll be looking for, but after, based on this move or this move, I'll still be looking for pullback for June so that we can get ready for a nice bullish summer. That would be the main goal. And by profiling these weeks, this is how you can have it. I like to refer to the entire data set as per profiling extremes and raids, but whenever I'm looking at actual numbers, this is where filtering based on more recent data rather than the last 20 years can be useful. In case you guys were ever wondering, that's how I personally use data. There is no right way to use it, in my opinion. There are multiple different ways. I have found that this is the most consistent for me when I'm looking at numbers. Refer to the last 3-5 years, sometimes even go back to 7-8 years. Do you guys have any questions? By the way, I've been rambling about data here and switching back to a chart for profiling, but perhaps that sparks some interest into you guys for some questions here. Definitely spotting a chat while we do this. What I am also interested in is if we do a bullish month of June, yeah, exactly. So we expect a trending month. So if we are to be bullish in June, we won't see anything, any pullback past week 1, and that is the high probability option that happens approximately 70% of the time, right? Right here we have 6, 1, 2. So of course, this is not the highest probability outcome because it is not highest probability to have a bullish month. But if we see some nice structure form in the week 1, for example, this is our NFP week right here, just this line, then it would be a very high probability move to expect a trending move to the all-time highs. I hate calling them that. You guys know. But to the current all-time highs. Yes. Previous year high sounds better. I get the gaps are inefficiencies, but what about the run on the sell side? When paired with that, does that not make it balanced? Do you mean right here? The issue here is we have nothing, right? You have a gap in price and nothing traded in this. So it is what we would call inefficient delivery. So even if we had this run here, it doesn't matter because this gap was formed after. It is, look, there's 1,000 different ways to look at zones like these, and you'll notice that sometimes it can take years to fill some of them, and sometimes they just get left behind, right? You'll find a bunch. You can go back down to early on in the 2010s, for example, and you'll find some gaps that we never revisited because we don't need to. But I understand that this is big for price, and if we gravitate towards this gap, for example, we're here, I'm going to expect this to be my next target. That's how I personally use them. So when I'm trying to build a story, right, build a narrative for the upcoming month, here, let's say I switch this for this period of time, well, it's easier for me to look at things that are high probability. And I know that if we do this move, then this will be high probability. We will see a bounce off of this. Would get files NQ to 0. Will get filled NQ to 0. Nice. For sure, Alex. These data and statistics are super simple. You guys can see I don't use any complicated frameworks on these higher time frames. And when I first started these monthly outlooks, I told you guys I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So I just started looking at everything, and turns out it really works. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. Honestly, of course, trading this week, I'd like to see us just run straight for it, then see some sort of easier pullback and a continuation. But depending on how we close with this level, I'm going to interact differently. Now, going into tomorrow, if you guys want a little more specifics, of course, it's Monday NFP. I'm going to look for a nice trending movement. But if you guys want more specifics, as I said, if we gap down aggressively and we see a bearish overnight session, I'm going to trade along to the gap. And if we don't have any sorts of crazy gaps, I'm going to look for basically along to this level. If overnight we reach this level, I'm going to look for retracement continuation. Very straightforward stuff there. But of course, with this week, we'll have 4 price action reviews. Do understand that the last week we had a little bit less. It was definitely a busy week. We only had one that actually did not make it to YouTube due to sound issues. Great time. Forgot to hit record on the soundtrack. But I'll catch it back with this week having 4 PA reviews every single day except for Thursday. I'm just looking left, and the area of those gaps price has down through them, up, back, downs. Sure, you can look to the left. I don't tend to do that since this specific gap, for example, was formed at that time. I don't want to refer to past price action. All right. See? Monthly statistical outlooks, 20 minutes. That's perfect timing. I have plenty of time. If you guys have any additional questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Always a pleasure, NJ. Glad you appreciate it. Quality outlook. I feel ready to enter. Let's go, Tricks. There's the Apex discount, right? I did remind it in the announcement, by the way. So I know I've been abusing of it, so I'm going to keep abusing of it. Just bought the last 4 accounts that I would be needing, unless I blow some of them tomorrow. I guess we'll see. But it's definitely a worthwhile discount, in my opinion. And if you buy an account today, for example, which is the last day, you have until June 11th to have the discounted activation fee. So if you guys were looking for it, I'm not telling you all it's worth rushing into a funded account, a prop firm challenge, if you're not ready. I do trust Apex. I have no reason not to. They've always paid me out without issue. Of course, they ask for very specific things. They ask for you to record yourself. They ask for you to showcase your system. And if you don't follow that system, if you're gambling, no, they don't pay you. But I don't do that. The way I trade is very simple. And they had no reason to deny me any payouts as they have done in the past. So yeah, I have no issue with them. I do believe it's a little bit harder of a firm, due to the live trailing threshold, but the only one that isn't that I know of, well, at least there's Top Step and MFF. But once you're done making money on those props, then you might as well switch to something a little harder, but still doable. All right, but Tricks, you have to follow a system. If you don't follow a system, they won't pay you out. Just something to keep in mind as you are trading. Tilt will actually cause you, well, will actually make you lose the whole account and not just the money you're going to lose. We're going to call it an evening here. I was going to say call it a night, but a little early for that. You guys have a great rest of your night. Good luck trading tomorrow, and we'll see each other back tomorrow evening for price action review.